In the quaint town of Pineview, an air of excitement buzzed through the streets, reaching its peak at the Clue Club's favorite hangout, Burgers and Fries. The reason? A grand invitation had arrived for the gang, sealed with an elaborate wax emblem and written in elegant flowing script. "Listen to this, guys," Sophie exclaimed, holding the invitation aloft. "We've been invited to a costume ball at the old castle on the edge of town. It's hosted by someone named Count Vorga." Dylan, ever the joker, quipped, "Count Vorga sounds like he's one cape short of a vampire convention." Max, intrigued, leaned in. "I've heard about that castle. It's been in the family for 300 years, but nobody really knows much about them. It's all very mysterious." Chloe's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "It says here that Count Vorga wants to meet the Great Clue Club. I wonder why he's so interested in us." Buddy, the loyal canine companion, wagged his tail enthusiastically, sensing the excitement in the air. As the gang discussed their costume ideas, the cook couldn't help but join in. "You kids be careful out there. Old castles and mysterious counts. Sounds like the beginning of one of your adventures." Sophie nodded, a determined glint in her eye. "We'll be careful, but we can't pass up an invitation like this. It could be a once-in-a-lifetime experience." The gang agreed, their minds already racing with possibilities. What secrets did Count Vorga's castle hold? Why had he reached out to them? The mystery was too enticing to ignore. Their conversation buzzed with excitement and speculation. The grand costume ball at the castle promised an evening of elegance and intrigue, and perhaps the beginning of a new mystery for the Clue Club to unravel. The Clue Club's excitement was palpable as they entered the local costume shop, a treasure trove of disguises and props. The shop, with its musty smell of vintage fabrics and the soft creak of wooden floorboards, felt like stepping into another world. Sophie immediately gravitated towards a rack of elegant gowns. She emerged from the dressing room in a stunning Victorian-era dress, complete with lace gloves and a feathered hat. "I feel like I've stepped out of a Jane Austen novel," she laughed, twirling around. Dylan, ever the comedian, couldn't resist a classic choice. He strutted out in a Sherlock Holmes outfit, complete with a deerstalker hat and a magnifying glass. "Elementary, my dear Watson," he declared, striking a pose. "Or should I say, my dear Clue Club?" Max opted for a more heroic look, choosing a dashing musketeer costume, complete with a fake sword and a wide-brimmed hat adorned with a large feather. "On guard," he joked, brandishing his sword playfully at Dylan. Chloe, with a flair for the dramatic, chose an elaborate Cleopatra costume. The shimmering gold dress and ornate headdress made her look like she had stepped straight out of ancient Egypt. "I just hope I don't run into any asps at the party," she quipped, referencing the famous queen's legendary demise. Buddy, not to be left out, was fitted with a small cape and a tiny crown, transforming him into a regal-looking pooch. "Look, Buddy's the king of the castle now," Dylan laughed, as Buddy wagged his tail, clearly enjoying the attention. After a round of laughter and a few more jokes about their chosen personas, the gang paid for their costumes and left the shop, their excitement growing. The costumes were perfect, and they were ready for whatever the night at Count Vorga's castle might bring. As they walked back to their van, the setting sun cast long shadows on the streets of Pineview, adding an air of mystery to their upcoming adventure. Little did they know, the night at the castle would be more intriguing and puzzling than they could have ever imagined. The Clue Club, adorned in their elaborate costumes, stood at the foot of the grand, imposing staircase leading up to Count Vorga's castle. The ancient stone structure towered above them, its Gothic spires silhouetted against the darkening sky. The air was filled with a sense of history and a hint of mystery. As they ascended the steps, the massive oak doors of the castle creaked open, revealing a tall, slender man with an almost ghostly pallor. "Welcome, Clue Club," he said in a voice that was both welcoming and haunting. "I am Count Vorga. Please come inside." The gang exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and apprehension in their eyes, before stepping into the grand foyer. The interior of the castle was as impressive as its exterior, with high-vaulted ceilings, ornate chandeliers, and walls adorned with ancient tapestries and portraits of stern-looking ancestors. Count Vorga led them through the echoing halls to the grand ballroom. The room was vast, with a polished marble floor, grand columns, and a large fireplace with a roaring fire. The walls were lined with tall, arched windows draped in heavy velvet curtains. "As you can see, I have a fondness for the grandeur of the past," Count Vorga said, gesturing around the room. "But let's not stand on ceremony. Please make yourselves comfortable. There is much to discuss." The gang took seats in the ornate chairs that were arranged around a large, intricately carved wooden table. The Count's demeanor was both gracious and slightly unnerving, as if he were hiding something beneath his polished exterior. Dylan, trying to lighten the mood, quipped in his best detective accent, "So, Count, is this where we discuss the mysterious happenings of Pine View?" Count Vorga's thin lips curled into a faint smile. "Indeed, young detective, but first, let me offer you some refreshments. The night is young, and our conversation promises to be enlightening." As the Count clapped his hands, a series of doors opened, and a team of silent, expressionless servants entered, carrying trays of exotic-looking appetizers and goblets of a dark, rich-looking beverage. The Clue Club members exchanged intrigued and slightly wary looks. The night at Count Vorga's castle was shaping up to be an unforgettable experience, filled with opulence, mystery, and perhaps a hint of danger. The atmosphere in the grand ballroom shifted palpably as the heavy metal latches clanged shut on the windows and doors. The Clue Club members, startled by the sudden lockdown, sprang from their seats in a mix of confusion and alarm. "Are we the only guests here?" Dylan blurted out, his voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and concern. Count Vorga, standing tall and composed, raised a hand, gesturing for calm. "Please, allow me to explain," he said, in a soothing yet commanding tone. Before he could continue, Dylan, in his haste to get a better look at the windows, stumbled over his own feet, crashing into Sophie and sending his drink splashing across her costume. "Oops, looks like I'm not just clowning around," he quipped, trying to brush off the awkward moment with a joke. Sophie, now sporting a drink-stained dress, rolled her eyes but couldn't help a small smile at Dylan's antics. Meanwhile, Buddy, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, seemed to have fainted, sprawling out on the cool marble floor. "Please, be seated," Count Vorga repeated, his voice calm but firm. "There is a reason for this dramatic setting." The gang, still on edge but curious, slowly returned to their seats, their eyes fixed on the Count. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the crackling of the fireplace and the distant sound of the wind howling outside the castle walls. Count Vorga began to pace slowly in front of the fireplace, his cape trailing behind him. "You see, my family has been custodians of many secrets over the centuries," he started, his voice taking on a somber tone. "And tonight, I seek your help in unraveling a mystery that has plagued my lineage for generations." The Clue Club members exchanged glances, their initial apprehension giving way to intrigue. Despite the eerie setting and the Count's mysterious demeanor, their detective instincts were kicking in. This was no ordinary costume party. They were about to embark on a new and potentially dangerous adventure. Count Vorga's tale unfurled like the dark tapestry of a bygone era, his voice echoing through the grand ballroom with a haunting resonance. 3 centuries ago, my ancestors settled here in Pineview, he began, his eyes distant as if visualizing the past. But our presence was not welcomed. The townspeople, driven by fear and misunderstanding, desired our departure. He paused, a shadow of sorrow crossing his face. In those times, disputes were often settled with curses and dark magic. A rival family, envious of our castle and lands, cast a curse on the last-born son of my lineage. That son is me. The Clue Club members exchanged uneasy glances, the atmosphere thick with a mix of disbelief and apprehension. I know how unbelievable this sounds, Vorga continued, but I am 250 years old. Dylan, trying to lighten the mood, quipped, "What are you, some kind of vampire?" His joke, however, fell flat in the heavy air of the room. Sophie, Max, Chloe, and even Buddy, who had now woken up, stood up in unison, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. "Okay, Count Vorga, we've heard enough. We want to leave now," Sophie declared, her voice firm. Just as they turned to find a way out, Count Vorga let out a piercing, desperate scream that reverberated off the ancient walls. "Please," he implored, his voice cracking with emotion. "I am not what you think. I am not a creature of the night, nor do I wish any harm. This curse, it has bound me to these walls, to a life of solitude and sorrow. I called you here not to frighten you, but to seek your help in breaking this centuries-old curse." The gang stopped in their tracks, the Count's plea cutting through their initial panic. They turned back to face him, their expressions softening slightly. The mystery had just deepened, and despite their apprehensions, their curiosity was piqued. Could there be truth to this unbelievable tale? And if so, how could they possibly help break a 250-year-old curse? Count Vorga's story continued to unfold, each word steeped in centuries of isolation and despair. "I am confined within these walls," he explained, his voice a mere whisper. "My servants manage the outside world for me, but I am forever trapped here." Sophie, her natural curiosity piqued, leaned forward. "What can we possibly do to help?" she asked, her tone a mix of skepticism and intrigue. "There is a place," Vorga replied, his eyes lighting up with a flicker of hope. "Behind the castle, about 500 feet from here, stands a small, unassuming building. Beneath it lies a cellar where the curse was originally cast. I've been told there's an ancient book and a wooden symbol mounted on the wall inside. My servants are too terrified to venture there, and I cannot." Dylan, always ready with a quip, joked, "So, you want us to play Ghostbusters in your spooky cellar?" Despite his jest, there was a hint of excitement in his voice. Vorga nodded earnestly. "I believe that book may hold the key to breaking the curse. I know little of its contents, but it's my only hope." The Clue Club exchanged glances, the weight of the task at hand dawning on them. A 250-year-old curse, a mysterious book, and an ancient symbol. This was no ordinary mystery. "All right, Count Vorga," Sophie said decisively. "We'll check out this cellar and see what we can find. But no promises." With a plan in place, the gang prepared to venture into the unknown. As they made their way towards the back of the castle, the air seemed to grow colder, and the moon cast eerie shadows across the ancient stone walls. The small building loomed in the distance, its silhouette a dark blot against the night sky. What secrets did it hold? Could they really help Count Vorga? The Clue Club was about to find out. The Clue Club, armed with flashlights and a mix of courage and trepidation, made their way along the narrow path leading to the small building. The night air was thick with the scent of old earth and decaying leaves. Dylan, trying to lighten the mood, cracked a joke about ghostly roommates, but even his humor seemed swallowed up by the dense atmosphere. Buddy, usually keen on picking up scents, trotted alongside the group, his nose twitching but detecting nothing unusual. Max, however, wasn't as fortunate. He flailed his arms, trying to ward off the spiders that seemed to have taken a particular interest in him. "Why does it always have to be spiders?" he muttered, half to himself. Chloe, meanwhile, duck it as a flurry of bats swooped down from the treetops, their wings fluttering like the pages of a haunted storybook. "This is like walking through a horror movie set," she exclaimed, trying to keep her composure. As they neared the building, the path seemed to narrow, the trees leaning in as if to whisper secrets of the past. Shadows danced between the branches, creating illusions of movement that made the gang quicken their pace. Sophie pointed ahead. "There it is," she said, her voice steady, but her hand gripping her flashlight a little tighter. The building was small and decrepit, its wooden frame warped by time and weather. Vines crept up its sides, and the windows were dark, like unblinking eyes watching their approach. An owl hooted in the distance, its call echoing through the trees, adding to the eerie ambiance. "Let's get this over with," Max said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "The sooner we find this book and symbol, the better." They reached the building's entrance, the door hanging off its hinges, creaking softly in the night breeze. Taking a deep breath, the Clue Club stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing a world untouched by time. The cellar door was just ahead, its old wood splintered and worn. As they descended the creaking steps, a musty smell enveloped them, a mix of damp earth and forgotten memories. The cellar awaited, its secrets hidden in the shadows. Descending the creaky steps into the cellar, the Clue Club was met with an unsettling sight. Shadows flitted across the walls, accompanied by whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. A sudden, piercing scream caused them all to jump, and Dylan, half joking, half serious, declared, "That's it, I'm about to set a world record for the fastest exit from a creepy cellar." Despite their rising fear, the group pressed on, their flashlights casting long, eerie shadows across the damp stone walls. As suddenly as it had begun, the cacophony of whispers and screams ceased, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. "Okay, let's hope whatever that was is gone for good," Sophie said, trying to sound confident. They reached the cellar floor, their footsteps echoing in the quiet. The air was thick with the smell of mold and ancient secrets. In the far corner of the cellar stood an altar, shrouded in shadows. Above it, mounted on the wall, was a strange wooden symbol, its design intricate and unfamiliar. "There's the book and the symbol," Chloe pointed out, her voice barely above a whisper. The book lay closed on the altar, its cover worn and its pages yellowed with age. The symbol above it seemed to watch them, its presence almost palpable in the dim light. Max stepped forward, his hand hesitating above the book. "Do we really want to open this?" he asked, looking back at his friends. Sophie nodded. "We have to. It might be the key to lifting Count Vorga's curse." With a deep breath, Max opened the book. The pages rustled softly, revealing ancient text and strange symbols that none of them could understand. The wooden symbol above the altar seemed to pulse faintly, as if reacting to the book being opened. "Look at this," Chloe said, pointing to a page. "There are drawings that look like rituals, and this text here, I wish we could read it." Dylan, trying to cut through the tension, quipped, "Maybe it's a recipe for the world's oldest pizza. You know, secret family recipe and all." Despite the joke, the atmosphere remained heavy, the weight of centuries bearing down on them. They knew they were close to uncovering something significant, something that could change Count Vorga's fate forever. In the dim, whisper-filled cellar, the Clue Club stood frozen as the shadows swirled around them. Sophie, her eyes wide, whispered, I think I can understand them. They're saying they're the cursed souls of the Vorga family. They want to help us." As if on cue, the ancient book flipped open to a new page, revealing a simple ritual inscribed in a flowing script. The whispers grew more insistent, urging them on. "Just read the verse, and we will do the rest," they seemed to say. Sophie stepped forward, her voice steady as she began to read the ritual aloud. The words felt strange on her tongue, ancient and powerful. Shadows of the past, bound by time, release your hold, let the curse unwind. By this symbol old and true, break the chains, begin anew. As she spoke the final word, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the cellar, causing the pages of the book to flutter wildly. The shadows, which had been dancing menacingly around them, began to converge on the wooden symbol on the wall. One by one, they were absorbed into it, their whispers fading into silence. The atmosphere in the cellar shifted palpably, the oppressive weight that had hung in the air lifting as if a great burden had been removed. The symbol on the wall glowed briefly with a warm golden light, then faded back to its normal appearance. "It's done," Sophie said, a hint of awe in her voice. "The curse, it's lifted." The group stood in silence for a moment, processing what had just happened. Dylan, ever the joker, broke the silence. "Well, that's one way to light up a room. Who knew ancient curses could be so dramatic?" Despite the levity, they all felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. They had freed the souls of the Vorga family and hopefully lifted the curse that had plagued Count Vorga for centuries. The Clue Club, still reeling from the surreal events in the cellar, made their way back to the castle. The night air felt different now, less oppressive, as if a heavy shroud had been lifted from the land. As they approached the castle, they noticed a group of servants gathered by the front door. These servants, cloaked and with faces as pale and sickly as their masters, seemed to be waiting for them. One of them, his voice barely above a whisper, said, "Count Vorga is finally free." The gang exchanged glances, a mix of disbelief and wonder in their eyes. Had they really just broken a centuries-old curse? The thought was both exhilarating and unnerving. Before they could ponder further, the servants ushered them towards the door. As they stepped outside, the door closed behind them with a finality that suggested this chapter of the castle's history was now closed. Dylan, breaking the silence, quipped, "Well, that was one heck of a party trick. I guess we can add curse-breaking to our resume." Sophie, still deep in thought, added, "This was unlike anything we've ever encountered. It felt real, more than just a mystery to solve." As they walked away from the castle, the group couldn't help but look back. The castle, once a looming presence, now seemed just a part of the landscape, its dark aura gone. The Clue Club had faced many mysteries, but this one would stay with them for a long time. As they headed back to their normal lives, they knew that the story of Count Vorga's castle would be one they'd tell for years to come. Back at Burgers and Fries, the Clue Club gathered around their usual table, each lost in their own thoughts about the night's eerie events. The air was filled with the familiar sounds of sizzling burgers and laughter, but the gang's minds were still at the castle. Sophie broke the silence, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "What exactly did we do back there? And what happened to Count Vorga? If he's free now, where did he go?" Before anyone could answer, Dylan, ever the joker, chimed in with a grin. "Maybe he flew back to Transylvania." Their laughter filled the diner, a welcome return to normalcy. But as they laughed, something caught their eye through the front window of Burgers and Fries. A massive bat, larger than any they'd ever seen, glided past the window in a slow, almost majestic flight. The laughter abruptly stopped as they all stared, wide-eyed. The bat's wingspan was enormous, casting a fleeting shadow over the diner. For a moment, it felt as if Count Vorga himself was bidding them farewell in his own mysterious way. "I doubt we'll ever forget the night we met Count Vorga." They all nodded in agreement, knowing this adventure would be a story told and retold for years to come. As they turned their attention back to their burgers and shakes, the Clue Club knew that no matter what mystery lay ahead, they'd be ready to face it together.